Are you new to Heroclix, or have you ever thought, what the heck is a sideline and how does that work? Well, then you've come to the right place. We're going to learn all about that in today's video. What's up, guys? Welcome back to your Heroclix headquarters. So like I just said, today we're going to be talking about sidelines and what they are, how to use them, and going over some of the more common and popular ways to use a sideline, what kind of characters can really maximize it. But of course, to do that, we're going to have to start by taking a look at our rule book. Now, sidelines are actually right here on the, well, it says third page. It's just as soon as you first open it up. Page number 3, right here in the middle, it says sideline, and it'll say, when building a starting force, some game elements may allow you to build a sideline. So right off the bat, that's going to tell us that to have a sideline, you must actually have something in your starting force that allows you to build your sideline. You can't just have it without having anything on your team actually needing to use it. So, but continuing on, it says, your sideline contains game elements that can be brought into the game by special effects. As above, your starting sideline is what you build during force construction, and an effect that says sideline means your current sideline. So what that last part basically means is if you have an effect that says like replace something with something from your sideline, then that'll mean your current sideline, not what you had at the beginning, what it can kind of change, so your current sideline. But the next paragraph says that when a sideline is allowed by game elements, up to 3 game elements per 100 points of the build total may be included in your starting sideline, with a maximum of 15 game elements allowed. So what that means is if we're playing a standard 300-point game, you get 3 sideline elements per 100 points of the game's build total. So you are going to have 9 sideline elements at maximum in a normal 300-point game. This can go up to 15, so even if you're playing a 1,000-point game, you're still only going to get 15 sideline elements max. So don't forget that, that's kind of important. Most of the time you might not need really that many. I'd say in most games I'll have like a couple sideline characters for one effect or another. But once you get to higher level play, definitely be on the lookout. There's going to be lots of teams that have a full sideline. So it's important to remember that 9 is the normal maximum for a 300-point game. But then this last part here says that the point values of game elements in your starting sideline are not counted as part of your starting force. So that's important to remember. For instance, if you have a character that's 75 points on your main team, and it says it can be replaced by another character with this trait on your sideline, you're not going to count the 75 points from that character as well. So it's really just 75 points for that character, and the trait that allows him to like swap off of the sideline is basically included into his 75 points. You don't have to pay the points of anything on your sideline. If anything that has that effect on your main force is already paying for it. So anything that's on the sideline is not counted in your main point total. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense to you guys. But now I'm going to bring in some characters so we can get a little hands-on and see what it looks like in action. Alright, so for the first thing we're going to look at is one of the most common and popular uses for a sideline, and that is replacement characters, or in this case, shifting focus specifically. So if we take a look at this Iron Man's card here, his shifting focus trait says, free, if Iron Man began your turn on the map, replace him with another character with this trait. So that effect is going to be looking for another character with this trait on your sideline. So essentially, if you were to build your Heroclix team and you put this Iron Man in it, now that you have a character on your team who has an effect that's looking for sideline characters, now you're allowed to build a sideline, and you can bring in the other 2 Iron Mans that have the shifting focus trait and have them on your sideline. So they're not going to be on the map, they're going to be off to the side somewhere off the map. And then whenever you want to use his free action to replace them, you just remember where he's at, take him off the map, take whichever one of these and put them back on the map wherever he was. It's important to note here that any replacement effects like this will automatically have you bring in the replaced character on the same click number. Unless it specifically says otherwise, you're going to bring them back in on whatever click number the replaced character was on. So of course in this example, if he's on click number 1, he's going to come in on click number 1. If he was on click number 3, then you'd replace him on click number 3, etc. And another commonly used one right now that the Fantastic Four set just came out is the Invisible Woman's trait. All of the Invisible Womans in this set have this same Form the New Fantastic Four trait, so we'll just take a quick look at this one. It says at the beginning of the game, you may replace up to 4 friendly characters with the same number of characters from your sideline on their starting clicks. All replacement and replaced characters must have the Fantastic Four keyword and different names. The total points of the replacement characters can't exceed the total points of the replaced characters. Alright, so let's try and break that down a little bit. So the first part says at the beginning of the game. So you're not going to be able to use this in the middle of the game. This is going to be your first turn, beginning of the game, before any other actions or anything happens. Now you may replace up to 4 friendly characters. So in this instance, we're playing all of the rare Fantastic Four figures on their 75-point lines to make a nice even 300-point team. So her trait is now going to allow us to build a sideline. So you can put any number of characters on there that have the Fantastic Four keyword and different names than any of these characters if you plan to replace them. And so at the beginning of the game, to replace all of them, just as long as they all have the Fantastic Four keyword, you can replace up to 4 characters with up to 4 characters from your sideline. So in this case, we could bring in the whole new Fantastic Four on their 75-point lines as well. Just because the math on that is easy, they're all 75 points, so it makes a nice little 300-point team. But you could still put a bunch of other characters on your sideline that are all kinds of different point values. You can still only replace them 1-to-1, but you could replace like 2. Maybe you have 2 that are like a 60 and a 40, and you replace them with 2 that are both 50 points or 75-25, some kind of weird split like that. Just so long as the total points of the characters you're bringing into the game are equal or less than the characters that you replace them with. Alright, and another really popular sideline character right now are all of the Batman the Animated Series and Justice League Unlimited Animated Series chases, because they all have the Trouble Alert or the JLU set. Some of the villains have Making Trouble or something. But it basically does pretty similar stuff. So since their trait says sideline active, it actually lets you play them on your sideline for their trait to be brought into the game. In this case, it says friendly characters have free if this character critically missed this turn or made the third attack this turn to miss all opposing targets. Place a character that can use a Trouble Alert trait adjacent on its blue starting line. And then at the beginning of the turn, you have to roll. Depending on what you roll, they might take a click of damage. So essentially, these Trouble Alert trait characters come into the game. If you're not rolling well, you critically miss. It gives you a chance to take a free action and place a character from outside the game adjacent to one of your characters that just critically missed or made the third attack that turn to miss all targets. So it's really just a nice little bonus to help you out when you're already kind of losing. Because to keep missing that many attacks, you probably aren't really doing too great, at least not that turn. So to bring in a whole extra character, especially the Flash, is great because he has prob control. So if you're missing that many attacks, you might need some prob. But these characters are great because they don't cost you any points, and they come in and help you when you're already losing. So I don't think they're too overpowered or anything. They're really nice. A lot of people just fill up their whole sideline just full of these characters. So if you can, make sure to stay on the lookout for some Trouble Alerts. They're really good to have on your sideline. But of course, we can't talk about sidelines without talking about the biggest thing to happen to sidelines, ID cards. Now, technically, they all just rotated out of Modern Age, so we don't really have to worry about them in Modern Age games and tournaments. But they are still a thing that exists in Golden Age and that you could still play at home games or anything like that. So it's important to know how these things work. So we're just going to take a quick look and see what it says on the back. So under the setup part there, it says, when you reveal forces, choose a character on your sideline whose name matches the name on this ID card, and then turn it to a starting click. That character is called an ID character, and you can't have more ID characters on your sideline than characters on your starting force. And the whole card is unique, so you can't play multiple of the same ID cards. Then under the call and help, it tells you basically how to use it. Call and help says, friendly characters have power. If no friendly characters have been given the same action this turn, and this character is equal or more points than the ID character, place the ID character adjacent, then remove this ID card from the game, and your opponent scores it. The ID character returns to your sideline at the beginning of your next turn, or immediately, if no square it occupies is within 5 squares of this character, as in the character that was take the power action to call them in, or it is removed from the map by another effect. ID characters can't be carried, be equipped, be given double power actions, replace or be replaced, and ID characters can be KO'd. And then it has an inspiration effect, and then up here it says what the inspiration effect does. Basically, when this character is placed on the map, adjacent friendly characters can use the ID character's inspiration ability till your next turn. In Wolverine's case, you get a free action to heal a click, which is pretty nice. But anyway, so that's a lot of words. Basically, what it boils down to is if I was to have this character on my team who is 75 points, and I have this 50-point Wolverine on my sideline as an ID character for this ID card, I can just give Iron Man here a power action since he's equal or more points than the ID character. And then my opponent scores the 5 points from this ID card. Wolverine comes in adjacent to Iron Man anywhere I want him to. And then, then your Wolverine can go charge Flurry on somebody if you want to. It's a really powerful ability. I mean, it really kind of defined the meta for years. That's why they just had to hurry up and retire all of them to Golden Age. But yeah, it's a really good effect. One actually important thing to note, because I also brought Iron Man's ID card with me. All right, so I mentioned earlier about how shifting focus works. But I think it's important to mention here that if for any reason I had Iron Man on my main force, and then I had the other 2 Iron Men on the sideline for his shifting focus trait specifically, I could not use them as an ID card character. Things that are on your sideline have to be there for one specific purpose. It either has to be here for his shifting focus trait or for this Iron Man ID card. It can't double up. I can't say that this Iron Man is my call-in Iron Man, but also he's my shifting focus Iron Man, because it doesn't work like that. Now you could, however, if you had, say, 2 of this Iron Man, you could play 1 as the ID card Iron Man and 1 as the shifting focus Iron Man. But you would have to have 2 separate figures and cards and everything. It could be the same figure, collector's number and everything, but it would have to be 2 separate physical copies of the character to play 1 as the ID character and 1 as the shifting focus character. Because like I said, you can't double up on those kinds of effects. Same thing with the sideline active for something like the Flash here. I could not have him on my sideline for the Trouble Alert effect and also have his ID card and try and say that he's my ID card call-in. I'd have to pick and choose one or the other. Now, one thing that is cool about the ID cards is, pretend I didn't have any Iron Man on my main force, right? I could actually play all 3 of these Iron Mans on my sideline, and at the beginning of the game, I can pick and choose which one I want to use for this effect. Because of the way that it's worded, how it says at the beginning of the game, choose a character on your sideline with the name of this ID card, then that lets you have multiple choices on your sideline. So in this case, I could have 3, 5, I could have 9 Iron Mans on my sideline specifically for this one ID card, and just pick and choose at the beginning of the game which character I wanted for that ID card this game. So that's another reason that ID cards are actually really powerful, because not only do they allow you that ability to just bring an extra character in from out of the game, it can be pretty much any character that you need. I mean, just in these 3 shifting focus Iron Mans, I have a good range attacker and a good close attacker and a good stealthy outwit attacker as well. So it's just that would give you plenty of options for an ID card. It's actually the same thing with this Invisible Woman's trait that I mentioned earlier as well. I could not have this Wolverine on my sideline for her effect and also pick and choose him for my Wolverine ID card. I'd have to have this one specifically for her Fantastic Four replacement effect and this one specifically for the ID card call-in, because it's two separate effects that need two separate figures to actually use them. You know, you have to have actual separate figures to bring in with those effects. Alright, so I hope that gets most of the point across, but while we're here, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about that might be confusing some of you guys. So another really big, important figure we just got was Dr. Doom and his Doombots. So one thing I actually just want to take a quick look at here. So if you actually take a look at Dr. Doom's special trait there that gives him leadership and mastermind, and when he uses leadership and succeeds, instead of the normal effects, you may generate a number 5 Doombot. So the difference here is that generating a figure is not the same thing as replacing a figure or calling in a figure from your sideline, like with an ID card. Generating a figure does not require a sideline. So you do not have to say that, oh, I'm bringing 8 of my Doombots on the sidelines. So you don't have to use up, you know, almost all of your sideline slots just for Doombots. Because generating a game element is, again, not considered to be part of your sideline. It comes in just from out of the game. You don't have to specifically build a sideline with generated characters. So actually that is a way around that awkward sideline rule where you have to have specific figures for specific effects on your sideline. Because if you're generating characters, you can actually, for instance, say this Doombot comes in, he's killed, he goes to my KO area, and then I roll leadership, I get to generate a Doombot. I can generate the same Doombot. So long as you make some type of note or a record just to remember that they've killed however many Doombots, you can just keep bringing in the same Doombot over and over again. So it's kind of nice. You don't have to have 20,000 Doombots. You can kind of get away with just a handful of them. But it might be worth noting that that's not something you could do with like the Trouble Alert Flash. If he's on your sideline, you bring him in from the Trouble Alert trait, he dies, you cannot bring him back. He doesn't go back to your sideline. You don't get to bring him back in from the Trouble Alert trait again. He stays dead. This is generated from outside of the game, so it's a different thing. It has nothing to do with sidelines. But I feel like some people might get that confused with sidelines, but it is a separate effect and has kind of different rules going on for it there. And if you guys want to read it, I'll just put it up on screen here for you. This is all the rules in the rule book for generating and replacing characters on page 31 of the rule book. So feel free to pause and read that if you have any interest. I kind of spelled it out pretty well, I think, but if you want to read it word for word, it might be better. But anyway, that about wraps it up. Alright guys, that about does it for this video. I hope you found it informative. And I hope you learned a thing or two. But as always, if you need any help, feel free to leave any questions you guys have in the comments, and I will do my best to help figure it out for you guys. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. I'd appreciate it. And don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. And if you guys have enjoyed everything you've seen so far and would like to help support the channel even further, make sure you check the link in the description for our Patreon. And you can see your name here in the credits, as well as many other awesome bonuses for joining the Patreon. So feel free to check that out. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, this has been Heroclix Headquarters signing off.